Hi guys, I'm Juva. When I took the TOEFL, I was really nervous before the listening section because the listening section is really hard. You listen to a ton of information and after that you need to answer questions and you do not have the possibility to listen to the stuff again. So if you want to have a really high score in TOEFL listening, you need the right strategy. I scored 29 in TOEFL listening, and today I'm going to tell you my 5 top tips how to get a really high score in TOEFL listening. I hope you're ready, guys. Let's get started. Let's start with tip number 1. Focus on the right things. In TOEFL listening, you do not need to understand everything in order to get a high score. In listening, you will listen to a ton of information. But the thing is that you do not need to understand all the information that you are listening to in order to score high in TOEFL listening, because some of that information is simply not important because it's not relevant to the questions asked. So, in fact, you only need to understand the information that is relevant for the questions. This means the information that you need in order to answer the questions correctly. And this means that you must have the right focus. In fact, if you try to understand everything in TOEFL listening, this may even lower your score, because then you do not focus anymore, because you try to understand everything there is, and you do not pay so much attention as you would need in order to answer the questions correctly. So my tip for you is, do not try to understand everything. Sometimes this is even not possible, and it is not necessary in order to get a high score. It's sufficient if you understand the important things. The question now is, how do you know what you need to focus on? And this brings us to my second tip: know the question types. In TOEFL listening, there are 2 kinds of tasks: conversations and lectures. And it's really important that you know these 2 types and that you know what kind of questions may be asked with regard to these 2 types. It's really important that you know the types of questions that may be asked, because ETS will always ask you roughly similar questions regarding these tasks. And this means that you can prepare these questions before taking the TOEFL. And when you are sitting the test, you will know what kind of questions you may be asked. And why is that so important? If you are sitting the exam and you are doing the TOEFL listening section, you will listen to a lot of information. And as we just said, you need to know what you need to focus on. And if you know what kind of questions you may be asked after the listening task, you know what you need to focus on when doing the listening task. So you're sitting there, you're listening to the information, and you know, okay, I need to focus on this or this because I may be asked that later. For example, usually there will be a task where you need to listen to a conversation between a student and a professor. And normally the student goes to see the professor because he has questions regarding his homework, or because he needs more time for a project and cannot stick to the deadline. You know, normal student problems. So it is highly probable that ETS will ask you after you have listened to this task why the student goes to see the professor. And if you know that, you know when listening to the task, okay, there is a conversation between a student and the professor, and maybe ETS will ask me afterwards why the student goes to see the professor. And if you know that, you're listening to the task and you know what you need to focus on. And this makes it much easier for you to score higher in the end. Let's go on with tip number 3. Take good notes. Guys, in TOEFL listening, it's really, really important that you take good notes. Why is that so important? In TOEFL listening, you will listen to a lot of information. And the problem is that after you have listened to all this information, you need to answer questions and you cannot go back and listen to the stuff again. So this means that you can only rely on your memory and on your notes. That's why taking notes is really important, because it's really difficult to remember all the important information that has been said. The problem with taking notes in TOEFL listening is that you are in a hurry. You will be in a hurry. You will have to rush because people are speaking rather fast and you simply won't have much time to take a lot of notes. That's why you need the right note-taking strategy. Try to take notes as efficient as you can. First, use keywords. Don't write everything out. Don't write whole sentences. You simply don't have the time for that. If you write sentences, you will lose valuable time, and you also don't need to do that in order to answer the questions correctly. What you need are the right keywords. Second, use abbreviations. Sometimes you don't need to write out a whole word. Sometimes it's simply sufficient to abbreviate this word. Of course, you should know what the abbreviation stands for when you try to answer the questions. Third, use your own words. And guys, I think this is really important. When we are learning English, we tend to copy what the speakers say because we think, okay, they are native speakers and I need this information. I need exactly what the speaker said in TOEFL listening in order to answer the questions correctly. That's not true. You don't need the exact information the speaker said. What you need is the idea. Therefore, write the things down in your own words, because this makes it much easier for you to take notes quickly and efficiently. And finally, use symbols. Sometimes it's really useful to use symbols when taking notes in TOEFL listening because you don't need to write things out. For example, if the speaker talks about a consequence of something, you could simply use an arrow to indicate that. If you take notes in this way, you will save a lot of time, and this will also give you the opportunity to focus more on what is being said. And this is the important thing, because this is the information you later need in order to answer the questions correctly. Let's go on with tip number 4. Choose an answer. Guys, in TOEFL listening, it may be that you read a question and you think, I have absolutely no idea how to answer this question. I don't know the answer. So this can happen. Maybe you didn't write it down. Maybe you can't remember what has been said. this is totally normal. In this case, the best strategy is to go with your gut. Why should you do that? In TOEFL listening, you won't get penalty points. This means that you should definitely choose an answer, because there is always the possibility that this answer is correct. And sometimes you simply have the right intuition because subconsciously you remember in some way what has been said. So therefore, guys, if you don't know the answer, think about what you've heard, think about the context, and think about what would be the most plausible answer for this question. And then just take this answer. Perhaps the answer is wrong. Okay, you don't get the point, but you tried. And perhaps the answer is correct. That's amazing. Always remember that there is the chance that your answer is correct. So just choose an answer and go with your gut. Tip number 5. Practice listening. Guys, I know this tip seems quite obvious, but I want to talk about it nevertheless, because it's really important and we tend to underestimate that. In order to get a high score in TOEFL listening, you have to practice. You have to listen to spoken English. I know that it can be difficult to listen to spoken English if you don't live in an English-speaking environment. When I took the TOEFL, I had never lived in an English-speaking environment before. So I had to rely on the other things that were available for me. And there are quite a few things you can use. For example, listen to English TV series or movies. Listen to the news, because this will help you to get used to listening to spoken English. If you do that a few times, your brain will start to get used to listening to spoken English. And whenever you listen to spoken English again, your brain will realize, okay, that's spoken English. And it will be much easier for you then when you are sitting the TOEFL exam to listen to the stuff that is being said, because you are already used to it. It's not new to you listening to English. So definitely practice listening to English before, and also try to understand what people say when you're listening. That's it. These are my 5 top tips for TOEFL listening. If you like, download the summary. You can find the link in the description below. If you have any questions or a video wish, tell me about that in the comments below. I would love to hear about that. And guys, I wish you all a great start into the new year, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!